For more, let's cross to Strasbourg. Paul Tang of the Dutch Labour Party is chair of the new European Parliament's Subcommittee on Taxation. Thank you for joining us here on France 24.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Have you uncorked the champagne?
Well, this is certainly a landmark deal. The corporate tax rate has been falling for more than 30 years. And on the table is a deal that will turn around this decline, will mean an end to the race to the bottom. So yes, it's a special moment. Not that it's done yet. It was already said, the devil's in the detail, but you want also other countries to join the coalition, you could say, of countries that will pursue the minimum effective tax rate of at least 15%.
At least 15%. So we heard in that report about Ireland. What are you expecting from the likes of Cyprus? Could there be a veto inside the European Union?
No, the interesting part is that this is a coalition of countries that can operate without Ireland and Cyprus. It's not a preference, but it could be, because what the countries try to do is to be, let's say, a tax collector of the last resort. If profits are shifted, let's say, from Germany to the Cayman Islands, and in Cayman Islands there is no corporate tax system, so that the rate is zero, then the German tax administration have to put on an extra levy to ensure that the corporate pays its 15%. So this can Germany do, as an example, by the way, without the consent of Cayman Islands. It's there within their right to tax the corporate the 15%. So that means that it completely undermines the position of the tax havens outside and inside the EU.
Outside and inside the EU, what does it mean, for instance, for a country like yours? In the Netherlands, the corporate tax rate is 25%, so well above it. Yet it's a favored place for European companies to incorporate because tax avoidance there, the rules are in their favor. What does it change for the Dutch?
Well, the change will be that we will no longer be a hub in the industry of tax avoidance, which the Netherlands currently is, and which the European Parliament strongly objects to. There are now many constructions rerouting money flows through the Netherlands because it's essentially untaxed. I assume that the Netherlands will join the coalition, and that means that the rerouting of profits through the Netherlands will come to an end. Does it have large impact? No, because it will mean less work for some highly specialized fiscal advisors, but generally there's no link between the profits that are rerouted through the Netherlands and any real economic activity like real investment in machinery or distribution center, or let alone to jobs.
And so on Sunday, when we first heard the news, those who have been clamoring for years for change were euphoric. And then on Monday morning, they wake up a little bit more doubting because they look at the fact that it's 15% of profits above 10%. And they found out that, well, if you're Facebook, based on 2019, yes, you're going to pay this corporate tax. But if you're Amazon, which reinvests, you won't. So how do you close loopholes here?
Now, okay, let's be clear. There are two parts of this agreement that is to be negotiated under the umbrella of the OECD. The first part is a list of 100 largest, most profitable multinationals. And for them, it applies, it's for the return over and above the 10% you just mentioned. The second part is to do with an effective minimum tax rate of 15%, and that applies in any case. So, yeah, there can be loopholes, but that means that we will be, like we said before, there must be a technical agreement to clearly define what profit is. As long as that's clearly defined, there's no way to, there's no chance to avoid taxes at that point.
Why are the stars aligning now?
Well, for two reasons. I think public awareness has grown that this is totally unfair. People from the left to the right think that everyone should pay taxes, also the large corporates. But adding to this demand for fairness is also the need for financing. Joe Biden shows the way in that sense. He wants to invest in The recovery wants to invest in infrastructure, and for that the Joe Biden administrations need the money. Therefore, they want to fight tax avoidance harder. But the same is true in Europe, of course. We also want to invest in the recovery and in sustainability. We need the public investment. Therefore, we need to raise taxes. And what is a better place to raise taxes for those that don't pay their fair share right now?
The introduction of moves to have in Europe this Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act, is that a factor here?
I'm not sure. It's just what the good thing about the deal last weekend is that the US and the EU have found a form of cooperation. We need to also, when it comes to the digital market, we need to restructure the market such that we reduce market and monopoly power. And I very much hope it's not a collision between the two, America and Europe, but that we can find common ground. And I also think in this area, I think there's common ground. I think on both sides of the Atlantic, there are concerns about the monopoly power of the few big tech companies.
I just want to come back a second to these countries that are kind of in a gray area, particularly Cyprus, where you've had the fact they sell passports to people. It's been pointed out as a place that does act as a tax haven. If there are these global rules, how could it be in Cyprus's interest to play along?
Well, if it is not in Cyprus' interest, it will be imposed upon Cyprus. But if other countries start to levy taxes, there's not much Cyprus can do against that. Cyprus is not just about corporate tax, personal wealth taxation. Of course, the agreement on last weekend doesn't concern personal wealth, let alone tax avoidance. For personal wealth taxes. So that's not at the table at this point. So the Russian money, for example, may still want to hide in Cyprus. But for the corporates and their profits, there comes an end to the profit shifting and the tax avoidance.
One final question for you, Paul Tang. The irony of the fact that this G7 taking place in England, when we know that the UK has so many of these offshore tax havens. Your thoughts on where it leaves the UK going forward?
Well, I think also, like I said, in Europe, there's also the need to raise the money for public investments. England is also thinking about a hike in corporate tax rates. If you want to increase revenue or even want to increase corporate tax rate, you need a deal like that has been made in the G7. And to be clear, right, it's not the end. This is the first step. It's an historical step, in my belief, but there will be next steps taken. Early July, there will be a G20 summit, and the coalition of countries that will be pursuing a minimum tax rate will need to expand, because the more countries join, the more effective there is, and there is no place for the tax havens to hide.
Paul Tang, Dutch Labour Party member, chair of the European Parliament Subcommittee on Taxation. Thank you for speaking with us from Strasbourg.